people to show up in the audience. All right, it's 10 a.m. We're going to open up our Yamhill County Board of Commissioners formal session on July 17th. Chloe, would you lead us in the flag salute? The flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you for that. Any changes to our calendar session? None. And D is our public comment. If there's anybody in the audience that has a comment, raise your hand, or if you're online, raise your virtual hand. Seeing none. Moving on to E, which is presentations. And this morning joining us is Chloe from our Yamhill County Dairy Women's. Welcome.
Thank you.
Morning.
So good morning. Like he said, I'm Chloe Bingman, and I am the Yamhill County Dairy Princess Ambassador. I'd like to thank you guys for welcoming me in this morning, and to Kit for inviting me to talk a little bit about what I do and about the dairy industry itself. So my reign began in March. I went through a little application process. There's different requirements. So like me, I didn't grow up on a farm. I didn't work on a dairy farm. So it's great that it's open to more than just living on a farm. I competed in dairy FFA competitions, and I also showed dairy cows at the county fair, and the state fair last year, as well as working in the Red Barn serving ice cream at the county fair and state fair. So those are really great opportunities for me to get involved in the dairy industry. And then when I decided to run as princess, we went through that application process. We had a county coronation at the Oregon Dairy Farmers Association convention. So there are 6 princesses total throughout the different counties in the state. And then we have 2 state princesses. The state princess is actually also a Yamhill County princess originally. And the alternate is from Washington County. So what we do is we do a lot of representing the dairy industry. We meet up with lots of different industries. So yesterday we actually attended the Oregon Dairy Industries golf tournament. It was really interesting to kind of see the different industries throughout the state of Oregon and talk with them a little bit about what they do, their processing, and just different ways that they're involved in the dairy industry. We've also done a few dairy farm tours, so we were able to go out, kind of see how they run their farms. It's interesting to see how every farm is different. So there are different variations, and we do a lot of representing and just kind of advocating for the dairy industry, not only the dairy cows and their cow comfort, but also how nutritious milk and other dairy products are.
Fantastic. Well, thanks for coming today. Part of one of those dairy tours, have you gone on a tour at the Banson Jersey Dairy yet?
Well, I went to Forest Glen Oaks,
Yep.
which are nearby. So I went with Amity Preschool, actually, and we were able to tour the farm with them, kind of get an idea of how they run theirs. They have an organic farm.
Yes.
So
It's
this is very interesting to see, yeah.
Yeah, cool.
Chloe, since you didn't grow up, excuse me, I don't have a voice. Since you didn't grow up on a dairy farm and you didn't have that entree to it, how did you get involved and how did you get access to the various things you needed to know about the industry?
Yeah, so I started in FFA, competing in dairy FFA competitions. So there's dairy foods and dairy cattle judging. My FFA advisor was very open to us competing in any competition that we were interested in. And so that one really sparked my interest and how I kind of got into it. That's how I started. And then through Yamhill County 4-H Ambassadors, I was one for the last 4 years. And we partnered up with the Oregon Dairy Women to serve ice cream at the county fair. And so that was also kind of dipping my toes into the dairy industry. And I started watching dairy shows, and my mom grew up on a dairy farm and past generations in dairy. So I thought that it would be really interesting to kind of show cows, kind of see how I can get into that. I leased dairy cows from the Wismer's Dairy last year. So I was able to show 2 heifers at our county fair and then take them over to the state fair. So that was super fun to do.
One quick question. What's the average size of a dairy herd?
Those actually range a lot. There's some farms that are milking over 2,000, and then there's other farms that are milking less than 100. So yesterday we actually toured the Shocks Dairy Farm over in Hillsboro, and they're currently milking 60 cows. Whereas you go to like the Wismers and they're milking quite a few more. And with the farms in Tillamook, they're also those way bigger farms. And so there's a really big range between how different farms are operating, how many cows they want on their farm, and if they're making their own milk and selling it or if they're selling it to distributors.
Thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
In your journey, what's your favorite cow?
I would say I have a couple. So my top favorite I'd say is a Holstein because I really love their print and pattern, but I also really like Brown Swiss. One of the biggest cows and they're really sweet.
That's my favorite.
Yeah, one of the most recent better changes for our local fair was that the Oregon Dairy Women's brought their ice cream booth to the fair, and it's very popular, and hopefully they keep it there.
Yes.
And just a little bit of background for Chloe. She was one of our fair ambassadors last year and probably one of the most dedicated to it. I mean, fairs for me, like parade season's over, and yet she's out there, goes and gets her own equipment, own truck, own RTV, goes into all the fall parades, all the winter parades. She ran it all year long.
Wow.
We got a great asset and just good bang for our buck for that scholarship that we gave out to Chloe. So thank you very much for that.
Yeah, the parade.
And her mom keeps me posted with all the pictures. She joined us our this year's fair ambassador. She joined us at the Alien Days parade on our float, and it worked out great. And mom keeps us all updated, so it's fantastic.
Yeah, so I've been attending the different parades this year too. I'll actually be at the Yamhill Derby Days on Saturday, and then a few more throughout the year. Also, those have been really fun. And then going to the county fair, we'll be at Tillamook County Fair also to kind of do a training with the Red Barn and doing milking parlor speeches that we'll later do at State Fair. So if you can find us all week long at the milking parlor or in the Red Barn during State Fair.
Well, we will definitely see you there.
See you there. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Appreciate
thank
you
you
coming.
so
Thank
much.
you, Chloe.
Thank you.
Thanks, mom.
Do we want a picture?
Sure.
Do you want a
Yeah.
picture, Chloe?
Be great.
Almost big picture.
Thank you very much.
All right, we're moving on to F, which is department updates. There is none. G is work session. There is none. H is the consent agenda. Looks like we have one contract and a couple minutes on there. Do I have a motion?
So,
Any further discussion?
None.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. I is old business. There is none. J is other business. J1 is discussion of the draft Yamhill County Parks System Plan. And we have Mark and Travis here if we have questions. Good morning.
So, good morning.
morning.
We would like to, we'd like if it would be all right if Design Workshop can do a quick presentation. They're actually, and I think they would need to share screen. And I'll let Design Workshop go ahead and introduce themselves once we get them up.
Hey there.
There we go.
Good morning.
Good morning. We had to rejoin as panelists, so thanks for pausing there for a moment for us to be able to rejoin, sending us an invite. I'm Anna Laybourne with Design Workshop, and we've got a presentation here for you to walk you through the plan document draft, but I hope that will build your familiarity, but also it will take some time if you have some comments or questions about it. And I'm sorry, I was abruptly kicked out and then rejoined. So if I missed anything there, please let me know if that's where you want me to go with it.
Yeah, you go ahead, and you're
All
good.
right, great. I'll share my screen. And well, we're excited to share with you the draft plan today because we're at this key moment of we've developed this plan with a lot of community input and understanding your system. And this is really the first moment sharing with you all of understanding how it might play out it being implemented. Let's see here. So let me share full screen here. So we've been working on this for a little while and are excited tonight today to share with you the outcomes of this plan document. And you've hopefully had this document for a few days or a few weeks now to get an understanding of its contents. But we're going to walk you through it so that if you haven't had a chance, you get familiar on this presentation. Thank you for having us. So our agenda for the presentation is talk about the plan purpose and give you an overview of its contents. We'll share the focus on the plan themes and goals, those driving the future of this plan, and then talk about the practical side of implementation. And then we'll leave some time for questions and answers. So talking about the plan purpose in the overview, it's important to acknowledge what this plan is for and what it does versus what it's not planned to do. So the Yamhill County Park System Plan is a guide for the next 20 years of enhancing, maintaining, and adding to the county's parks, open space, and recreation opportunities. It's to be informed by community needs and will direct the county decision-making into the future. So you can proactively plan, you can be prepared for things, you can have enough lead time to really take on bigger efforts, and also have a key understanding of how are things working now and where are the challenges, where are the issues to address. And what it is intended to do is be that long-term guiding document. It's not a mandate, not a requirement, and it is not intended to be a commitment for the next year of what you'll implement. It's to guide and direct that and be a decision-making tool. So that's a really key aspect of what it is and also what it is not intended to be in its use. So you have more flexibility over that long term of how you'll implement it and also what resources you'll need to make sure it happens. So overall, Design Workshop was hired through a competitive process to help support this effort. And Xiaozhen and I and the rest of our team at Design Workshop worked through this whole process really with deep dive into the analysis of discovery about your system, comparing it to other systems with benchmarking, gathering community input. I'll talk about some of those sources of how we heard from your community to date. And then developing some overall direction with a vision, themes, goals, some key strategies, big ideas, and community input. And after that direction giving, we worked on prioritization. What are those action items? What can you undertake with your current funding? What additional funding would you need to take on more of this vision? And then led to the creation of this document to commemorate it and then moving into adopting the plan. So there'll be some next steps after this work session for that adoption process. And that's where we're at in this overall method to create a plan document. Your previous document was quite out of date. There were a lot of things that had already been implemented and done. And so it really was a need to update this and take it to the next level so that if you do want to go after grant opportunities, or if you are looking for some collaborative opportunities, you have this guiding document to direct. So this is an overview of the contents of the plan. If you haven't had a chance to look at it, just wanted to point out the key chapters. There's an executive summary. If that's all you read, that's helpful. It's that overview, and that's what we expect most of the community is looking at for that guiding direction. It's a real summary piece of this overall. There's an introductory chapter to give that context and set the stage for the plan. There's the evaluation. So that's what our team did in this rigorous analysis of what you have now, what have been the trends, the challenges, and what does that future look like? And that includes input from the community, from your boards, from understanding from your staff about operations. And then the real heart of the plan document is this 20-year vision. And so that includes some guiding themes, a framework, and it really tells your story. And the last piece of it will be useful to your staff, to your departments, your partners, of thinking about that implementation of these, because we want this to be a practical guide as much as it has vision. So that 20-year vision is set up with a framework, really starting off with what is the overall vision? What are your values? And I'll just read that because it's such an essential piece of this. It's about connecting our communities to nature and water, preserving natural resources, and celebrating architectural legacy by providing distinctive and outstanding parks and recreation that are financially sustainable. I want to make sure to read that part because I think holding on to what is the purpose of what the county provides is really important as you're looking at how municipalities, how state entities and others, how they're providing these spaces. But this is really as an essential resource to your county of how nature, water, how these things are provided and conserved and managed long term, and what benefit they provide as a place that people want to visit as well as live. And so within that plan structure, we start with that vision statement. That is then supported by some plan themes that I'll review here with you. And under those themes, there are a variety of goals of what you're seeking to achieve over that 20 years. And that's followed by the strategies of how you'll achieve those goals, some big picture things. And that how then has specific action steps beneath them for capital projects, as well as policies and programs going forward. So that's that overall framework. And we'll hit on these key themes because they really are distinctive to Yamhill County and what we heard from the community, as well as the opportunities we saw as we visited and toured all your properties and thought about their potential. But very simply, there are three concepts that really emerged from our discovery in this process. Some concepts that will carry you into the next 20 years. One is about how your creeks and river are a source for recreation and how those could be enhanced over time, how they can be conserved and really be those not just recreation spaces, but spaces where wildlife and habitat and ecological systems are what you really value, and make sure that they are appreciated as well cared for. It's about developing destinations, seeing how your visitation has increased and how that's such an important part of your economic base, but also for community members, that many of your locations of your parks are fairly far out there. They provide a whole variety of experiences and amenities for residents to experience. And so we're really thinking of these as destinations and how to draw people to them in different ways and what they provide when you're there. And then lastly, enhancing experiences and environments. This is looking at how your existing parks, many of them are, so well cared for, but there are some improvements they could have in thinking about how their historical features, the cultural aspects, how do people gather together, those natural environments. What are those memorable experiences and places that people want to go to that you're going to need to look over the next 20 years of how you enhance and care for them. So this overall, it does have some physical planning of directing where improvements would need to be. So taking those three key themes and applying them throughout your current spaces and looking for where there's some gaps of what do you need to provide in the future. Are there areas that are underserved? So this is one map that helps demonstrate those opportunities for improvement over the long term of how to apply that vision framework. And one thing we're really excited about in this plan and effort was discovering how much was going on regionally for water system planning and looking at that trail system and the opportunities you have within all of your parks. We really were impressed with just the majority of your parks have some sort of water access. How could those be more robust? How could they connect into this regional water trail? And what future do those have as people are seeking out more ways to engage with water and experience these places? So some key elements of the plan. First, we started off with really inventorying what you have in your offerings. It's important to ground this in an understanding of what are those spaces and how do they work, so that you now have a lot of maps and analysis and inventory of what is in your system. And it's helpful to communicate that as a county, you're taking care of 272 total acres of parks and natural areas. That's 16 sites that have water access. There are 4 small picnic areas, 2 educational research areas, 4 places in the parks with boat access currently, and overall that equates to 18 parks and natural areas. And you can see from these maps just they're spread throughout the system of what they offer. Some of them that are not developed, and those underdeveloped parks, we looked at those as well as those that are usable park spaces today. A key part of this was looking at your budget. Your county overall is smaller than others when it comes to your total park budget by a considerable amount of what your role is and what the budget is overall for caring for these spaces, and also for making improvements to them. And we really noticed that as far as the total that can go towards capital improvements, that means any type of really physical changes to the spaces, it's a very small amount. It really doesn't allow you to take on projects over the long term. You're more replacing and caring for currently. So we do acknowledge that this plan needs to have that thought about if you are to take on this larger vision, there'll be a strong need for additional budgetary resources. It's a real thought for call to action, knowing that you have very few staff. The plan documents that and shares that they are stretched thin in providing for that maintenance long term, traveling all throughout the county to all of those spaces. And the community in the survey indicated that they really think that overall they're in great condition when it comes to the day-to-day maintenance, but those capital improvements is where they're falling short. So this slide is representing a couple of things. One is your overall budget distribution for that parks and open space, natural areas care and upkeep and improvements. And then also comparing your park budget to some comparable counties in what you have overall. And there's a deep dive into that analysis within the plan. We're happy to talk about that more if that's helpful. But as far as our view as consultants who do this work throughout the country, we really see that your department is under-resourced in caring for the total amount of acreage you have to care for, as well as in the thought about its upkeep and improvements over time. And just how spread out they are and the travel it requires to get to all these spaces, there's some real considerations about the long-term sustainability that we hope this plan brings to attention. So just some highlights here on the community engagement of how we heard from people. The online survey was really a robust response rate. We feel very confident that the results are representative of the community, given that we heard from 626 surveys completed, and we were hearing from all parts of the county, all geographies, and all kinds of different demographics that were important for us to understand. Did we get a significant response rate? So that is a really helpful piece of information for us in understanding community desires. A few things that really stood out to us in that, or one thing that really stood out to us that is 82% of respondents expressed a high likelihood to support additional funding and spending for parks and recreation improvements. We asked a question in a couple of different ways to understand their priorities. And we recognize that people who take the survey may be more likely to have an interest in this, but we also find that in these surveys, oftentimes people who have a real resistance to funding would respond as well. So that response rate is one that when we do this in communities and you have anything really above 65% response rate of interest, we say you probably should be looking at ways that you can ask the community for additional funding support for parks. There was a community meeting as well that had opportunities for people to come in person and speak with us, as well as engagement of your parks board in this process. So in those, we really looked to how could understanding the community meetings, that there was a desire for increased awareness to the parks and their locations and what's available throughout the county, a desire for improved park safety and accessibility, and improving river access. Those were some of the key things that hearing from the community made us want to address those within the plan. We also had some focus groups with stakeholders who have particular insight and knowledge and technical understanding or experiences that we wanted to learn from. And there were about 30 folks who provided discussion around these topics of natural resources, recreation interests and tourism, and parkland management and economic vitality. So that was helpful for additional insights to inform this plan and make it really your county specific plan. So happy to share with you today the plan themes and goals that help guide this overall. They are these 6: distinctive parklands and experiences, responsible recreation and tourism, resilient ecosystems, land management, sustainable funding mechanisms, effective park operation and maintenance, and community building and stewardship. Everything is organized under one of these 6 themes within the plan document to really help guide it and reach that overall vision. Within that, it's then organized with each of the themes having goals. So here's just an example under the sustainable funding mechanisms. There are a couple things we're recommending under there that we want to draw your attention to today. One is about pursuing increased allocation of internal county general funding for parks, given that the staffing resources as well as equipment. There's a number of things there that we've highlighted that we want to advocate for additional funding to really make sure you're keeping up with what we see in other peer counties. What we see is this how to sustain long-term the standard of care and maintenance that's occurring, and also to really then also create a long-term plan for capital investments. The other key piece of this is, of course, in thinking long-term about expanding things like revenue generation and funding sources. So one of the key aspects of this is looking long-term of many counties are having a designated tax that would help provide for that both at times capital improvement projects of some of the things we've highlighted of how to make your parks long-term enhance and provide for better experiences for people, as well as a funding source with a tax that could potentially be used for some of that maintenance support. So as I pointed out, the survey really highlighted that interest in saying we would highly value these parks and natural areas. We want to understand the funding support that the community might suggest for this. So we'll talk as well about implementation of those practical side. The last chapter highlights these key initiatives of different phases of understanding today you don't have the funding to take on much when it comes to improvements. And so it has this phase 1 of some of those tasks to undertake. One of the key ones is looking at your current properties. There may be some that they don't provide as much value when it comes to the county's use or even the recreation or the natural resources provision. We've identified some that you might think about either a different type of partnership or selling off of those lands to increase your funding to direct towards those that do need those improvements and would be more useful for those repairs. In addition to that, we're highlighting the need to start an effort and looking at funding sources and which ones are most appropriate and ones the community would support going forward. And then in phase 2 and 3, that is in those actions of potentially seeking a voter-supported dedicated funding source for parks so that you're not only dependent on the general fund, as well as then looking at those projects that would help you implement and create those improvements long-term throughout your system. In that really practical side, we're looking at the capital improvement projects and helping the department really plan out that long-term action depending on funding availability. And so we've identified here the range of costs in that chapter that you might anticipate, as well as how they relate back to the overall goals of the process, those individual action items, which, things like conducting extensive tree work along the park system for safety and tree health, all the way to looking at how some of your park spaces need some conceptual planning and improvements overall for their long-term, what will they become? So those are the highlights of what you'll find in the plan document where Xiaozhen, our project manager, and myself are available now for any questions you might have or comments. We'd love to hear your impressions of the plan and anything that might be helpful for you as you think about the plan adoption. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll kick us off. I'm going to work a little bit in backwards because I went through it all and just made some notes and then I consolidated after she answered a few of my questions. I'm going to go on to page 48. And when we talk consolidation of the parks, I know the Parks Board's talked about a few of the different parks, but how did we get to the rest of the list? Was that just an internal discussion in parks, or were those discussions had at the Parks Board level?
These were discussions we had with the consulting team,
Okay.
doing site tours and things like that, just assessing different options and opportunities. So
Okay.
this was a list we generated of some possibilities.
Got it. Okay.
And then I'd say the Parks Board had an opportunity to review this plan as well and provide their comments. So they were involved throughout the process. We engaged with them, but also they've taken a look at all of this and provided their input when we reflected their comments and edits already.
Perfect. Thank you. On page 30, on that highlighted blue section, Yamhill County has a total of 1.1 park acres per 1,000 residents. I just want to make sure that we focus. I don't want it to make it seem like because we don't have enough acres per compared to a bordering county. I want to really start focusing, and maybe we could change the messaging a little bit here on quality versus quantity.
Mm-hmm.
Just a little bit of input.
Yeah, and if I could respond to that, I'm glad you picked up on that one of because your lands are mostly about natural resources and outdoor spaces that are not about trying to pack as many people into them. We did not use a grounding about like people per park or acres as a strong metric about where you should be with what you have, because it really should be about what are your opportunities. It should be about the qualities of those spaces, and it should be about the distribution. So we hit on more about like that drive time of do people have a park to go to that is reasonable distance from where they live within the county, and are they distributed well? And so you'll see a lot of that mapping was more of a key indicator of should you have more property, rather than it being about the total acres, because you're not about the can we fill these parks to capacity of people? That shouldn't be the measurement. But we picked counties that have a similar approach, that they are about larger land areas that they manage, and we avoided using towns and small and cities that are focused on that. How do we maximize people per acre or acres as the only indication of how much land you should have in your inventory?
Which brings me to my next question that I
Mhm.
think we need to add into this on a very just high level is a map with our parks, with all the city parks. I think that'll add a lot of context to what we're doing here. Because 68% of the people that were part of the surveys were from within city limits.
I mean, CPRD has a ton of parks and access, and if you want to count those into the living area,
Just on a very high level. I mean, like the one we already did, it just has the dots with our names on it.
Mhm.
I think just maybe expand on that a little bit, assuming it doesn't change the scope of the work too much. The other note that I have is on the budget assessment, page 43. I want to be very careful when we start comparing to other counties that we do apples to apples, because I know Lynn County has way different structure than we do as far as their revenues for their parks. We have next to nothing for revenues. In fact, even the ones we do have revenues barely even cover our costs to go pick up the garbage. So
Correct.
I want to be very careful on how the messaging on this when it goes to public. We probably should clarify on, maybe put some asterisks on it on what their, I guess, general layout of their parks are: campgrounds, revenue generating stuff, which is what, at least for me, I aspire to be for our parks.
That's right. And that's partly why we included that one, was more of an aspirational component, understanding where you are compared to others of where you could be, or there is no apples to apples of exactly what you do compared to others. This was the closest we could get within your region in understanding which ones might be comparable. But you're right, we can put in some disclaimers of how different they are, and partly their operations and staffing. Some of these do provide more staff for their program provision, whereas you do partnerships.
This one comes down to messaging. I mean, if somebody just picks this up and is like, oh, well, Yamhill County doesn't spend hardly anything on their parks. Well, yeah, but let's at least get a little bit more info out there so the pitchforks and torches don't come out. And
Yeah, it's one we have talked about
Okay.
with the consulting team and have had discussions about this.
Okay.
This specific items.
I think there's easy stuff that we can just like say asterisk or something so
Absolutely.
the information's in there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Love the strategic land ownership. I think that definitely needs to be one of our high focuses, which, being involved with the Parks Board and seeing how what they're geared towards and what their conversations are, I think we're on that track. So I have no concern there. And I think it's a good direction. Page 43, I already covered that one. So that's all the questions I had, commissioners.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I think I'd like to see a little bit more into what the chair was talking about on the revenue side of things. I think we can't invest in our current funding mechanism, right? Just in general funds alone, 678,000 just isn't, barely covers the staff, right? So I would like to see a priority in moving up. How do we invest and the mechanisms we have for that into getting those revenue generators? I think like an RV park or something to that effect. And if that means that we are implementing, I don't think obviously a bond or a levy isn't going to be the ultimate answer on that front, but we don't have a TLT tax. And I know that there are examples of counties that use TLT even in the 70% portion of it to invest into their parks, especially for us being a tourism county, if you will, being able to use part of that 70% to go to, if we were to invest several $1 million. I have examples of what the county would bring in if we implemented a TLT tax, and it's well over $1 million total for that 70-30 split. So several years, we could achieve something like that in only a couple of years if we were to implement that. So I look at prioritizing those types of things. And or other streams, working with our fairgrounds on some other parks or something to that effect, and investing into those drivers for other forms of recreation, fields, access, things like that. When we invest into those things, we see an 80-20 split of usage, and 80% being our residents, 20% being tourism and economic drivers in those. So, and there's plenty of examples of that. So those are my biggest things is, how are we leveraging? I see tourism pop up several times in that plan, and just how are we leveraging just that? If they can, if people are going to come here, how are we going to use that to our advantage into funding our parks, our roads, our public safety aspects of things? So, yeah, I think that's my major feedback. Although this is a very impressive plan that you guys put in a lot of work. So thank you for everybody that was involved. I know that it was a lot of work there.
Yeah, and thank you for pointing out that part about the funding mechanisms. We honestly think that is the most important thing to make this plan possible in any way. There's some low-hanging fruit and some short-term wins you can have, but really long-term, with the properties you have and the interests you have from your community and the values that are placed on this, we would really emphasize those that analysis we did about the types of funding mechanisms that are possible to take some next steps in evaluating which ones you want to pursue. Because while there are so many grant opportunities that are available, you don't have match funds to be able to even pursue those, and you don't have the staff to put together the grant applications. So with that competitive setup for grants, it really is something that looking at your funding sources for both short-term improvements as well as long-term is a really critical piece that I'm glad your commission is taking a look at in this plan.
And I believe too that we, as we invest in parks can become more sustainable, and then we can start to claw back some of that 600,000 that we, from general fund and put it into other areas, public safety, roads. But just as you get, you have to be that funding mechanism to become a little bit more self-sustainable. So.
Yeah, a dedicated funding source would be helpful, so you don't have to respond to the fluctuations of the general fund and trade off with other things. And we have seen when you get a tax passed, it makes all the difference. And so many communities are finding that that's possible as they see community members finding more and more value placed. So partly it's building awareness of the county parks to start with, and understanding the values people are placing, helping them experience them in a way that they say, there's a vision for improvement and there's things we could get more out of in this community. We'd love to help support that. So there are a lot of steps in getting there, but once you're there, it makes all the difference in being able to implement a plan like this.
I just want to point out that that budget number, that 653, those are the projected total expenses.
Oh, sorry. I just used in the,
25-26 was 364, bringing us to a deficit of 288, 650. So
thank you.
that's basically, we've got 295 FTEs. That takes up more than half of the total projected revenue. So there is a deficit.
Sorry, my mistake. Numbers in the presentation.
Couple comments made. I just want to make sure there's clarification. Commissioner King has his way of looking at far as how funding should be and priorities of that. I just want to make sure that as a commission, we definitely don't agree on probably the different aspects of funding, i.e. TLTs or whatever. My main focus would be funding on for sustainable funding would be our parks generating that revenue for us, which would be the campgrounds, the RVs and stuff like that, just so we're clear. Which goes to page 60 would be like goal 1, goal 2. I would almost want those goals in tandem. If not, I'm kind of almost leaning to have goal 2 as goal 1. Just to put more of an emphasis and a priority on expanding that revenue generating activities.
Yeah, and we've found that you really need to do a feasibility study on that. From our experiences with campgrounds and other revenue generating sources, events or rentals, reservations, sometimes it can be either a net gain or it can be just such a small amount given that you have to increase your staff to support it, that we really think that there needs to be additional study about revenue generation potentials and do a pro forma on all of these ideas.
Okay.
That's where our recommendations lie right now, is that next step, so that you get the reality of what it could mean.
Yep.
The one thing we are doing just at a low level right now within the Parks Advisory Board, as you know, Chair, we are assessing our fee schedule.
Yep.
And really drilling down into that with the Parks Advisory Board to come up with a better plan of action to tackle that, and where do we bump those rates up? Is there a way we can change our existing structure that makes more sense, not only for us internally, but for the community at large as well? So we are already tackling some of these things. So.
Yeah. And I think internally, another thing we could probably do is get with Lynn County, because I've heard comparisons of Lynn County, what they have going on that seem to be the direction that I would want to go.
Yeah.
But maybe just some high level stuff, like maybe their budget, the revenue lines for fees that they charge, and what the portion of that is sustaining their Parks and Rec budget versus what's coming in from their general fund. And let's start seeing what the ratios are.
Yeah.
I have a couple of questions. Wasn't there at some point, I don't know if it's still in existence, but a portion of SDCs that are they going to parks budget?
Correct. Yeah, there's limitations on SDCs, but there is a parks SDC that exists, and it's a 60-40 split between the fairgrounds and parks. So every building permit outside of the Chehalis Park District and out in the rural areas, any building permit has a system development charge. And so Parks does have that. But there's limitations. It can only be used for capital improvements and can't be used for any operational costs.
Right.
And
Well, we-
planning.
We have a huge list of capital improvement needs, so that wouldn't be a problem.
Mhm.
But where is the 60-40 split memorialized? Is that
Board order.
that's a board order, so that could be
Correct.
changed.
Yes, it can.
Easy.
It's actually,
Easy.
Just thinking, the fair is a money-making concern. They are generating an income. We give them economic development money. So just as something to think about.
And I should clarify.
40-60.
it's not just simply a board order. I believe it's tied because system development charges are adopted by ordinance to establish those fees. And I believe the split is part of that. So to reassess that or get into that.
Well,
we'd
let's get some
probably-
details on it and
Yeah.
look into it for sure.
It's still not a large amount of money, though. I mean, we
It's
looked at it
not.
yesterday. It was $10,000 a year or something to that effect.
Because I'd still like to prioritize all that. I mean,
Mhm.
taxes is going to be at the bottom. I'm not saying remove it off of here,
No.
but it is not a priority of mine. Mine is to make this sustainable on its own first, without throwing a tax out there.
SDCs are
And
kind of
even
a
if we have to get-
double-edged sword to
Clarify on SDCs would be a good
And
avenue.
it's something, but I just thought, since the fair is doing so well these days, thanks to your signs.
I
with
don't know if
the
it's
epic,
well, but doing better for sure.
It's
yeah.
doing a lot better. I had a couple of questions when you're done.
Yeah, no,
I
go
know you've
go
got-
ahead. I think we're just
So thank
pivoting
you.
off of.
This has been a long time in the works, and thank you for all the work that you do in our and design workshop. This is great. Also, the Parks Advisory Board is so engaged, and it was an example of what happened Saturday at Ed Grenfell Park. And I think what they did in raising the money for a particular project to improve that park so that there's nighttime activity, there's, lights, it's safety oriented, that type of thing. It's an incredibly beautiful park, but there are limitations. But what went on Saturday was an example of huge community involvement, a very engaged Parks Board, and raising money that went to that project. What was the final number on that?
I don't know the final number. Their goal was 10 grand and they're really close
They were
back. there.
close.
So we still have some funds coming in. People have heard about it and are still donating funds. But last time I checked, we had achieved the $10,000 goal and we're around 10,200 at the moment.
Good.
We could be beyond that right now. On the day, we raised about $1,400 through the sale of hot dogs and the silent
Silent
pin and things like that. So.
Okay, so that's an example of what we could do when there is interest now to go from park to park and really engage the local folks there. There are folks who were there who say, I've never been to this park, and yet it's not that far. The other thing, and this has to do with, I look at, for instance, CPRD. CPRD has had a lot of donations, a lot of land donations, and then has to deal with the fact that they can't develop them all. So they're all sitting there. And then finally, years later, after people have donated this, they're finally seeing that they can get some of these parks developed. But I think in terms of inventory, I think we might have to do some priority work here. We can't take care of them all. So if we look at Stuart Grenfell, we look at how far out that is. People in the more rural areas, I would imagine, are not likely to necessarily make use of a park the way folks closer in would. You live on rural property, you don't have the need to go do that, I would imagine. It's nice to have, but can we address whether or not we've got way too much, we're spread too thin? We have to know what our limitations are. A couple of things, the urban versus the rural parks, there's such a distinction there that I think that's a great idea, including what are the parks, what are the city parks and how do they interface with our rural parks? So I think triage is important. We're going to have to prioritize. I am not in favor of another tax, a transit lodging tax. I've been very clear about that over the years. A tax on other people is still a tax, and we love those taxes on other people. I think there are ways for us to generate income, and I think that using partnerships and just the generation of income within each particular park and making them self-sustainable is the way to go. But we've got a lot of parks that, quite frankly, I don't know that we're going to be able to take care of them. I mean, look at Crabtree. CPRD can't do it. Who can? Stuart Grenfell.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Still go back to a lot of these, and I've said this before. once we get a pocket of seed money, whether that's a grant, whether that's a sale of one of the parks that we do have, you know, Dayton Landing to Dayton or whatever it may be, I think that will be the snowball that will start us to our sustainability of funding for whatever we end up doing, a campground, RV park,
Yeah.
just upgraded facilities that we can, the value would be there to be able to charge more and people would still be interested in coming, whether it's a wedding venue. I know you've had those ideas before. Heck, even this morning, I'm looking through the sports, page 96 has the general sports interest and pickleball's on there. Well, then I'm like, well, pickleball in town, you're starting to get complaints from neighbors about the noise that it creates. I'm like, well, maybe Crabtree's perfect for pickleball out in the, you know, middle of nowhere. I don't know. You already got a gun
Yeah,
club
already
right
got a
there
gun club.
rattling off, you know,
Yeah.
rounds, which is fantastic. And they're not going to go anywhere.
No.
Might be a perfect fit. But anyway, I think there's a lot of great ideas that we can do, but we just need that first lump seed money and then make it sustainable from there.
Yeah.
Sorry. Did you finish up?
No, I was just going to say, well, CPRD is hot on the pickleball trail, and they've got the pickleball advocates are out there, and I'll tell you, they are a passionate bunch. And so they've done that over at Jaquith. And I mean, there are the detractors as well, but it's quite the sport.
Well, we were given.
Yeah.
I
We
don't-
tried in the plan to point out what purpose should the county focus on when it comes to recreation, given that the towns do have their own distinct needs for recreation and their purposes. So we try to create that definition for you all, so you're not having to pivot and turn to all these different directions of how do we meet all the recreation needs within the county. That the towns play a critical role in that. And we try to focus on the aspects where the towns, it isn't their primary goal, particularly around nature education, of natural lands management, water access. There are a variety of things that you as a county can focus on that would provide for the recreation needs in a distinct way. So looking at your properties and what you have, there's some real opportunities there that we've outlined those particular improvements to those properties and the recreation interests we heard through the survey to meet those needs.
I would like to say that, you know, like in selling Stuart Granville, I think that is an access to people who live in rural towns that don't have great parks and to get outside of town. That's not necessarily their neighbors that are going to
Yeah.
there. That's an access to water to cool down in these hot months. I think it's people fish there. I think it's a launching point into other recreation. And I would be fine to sell a park like Crabtree, or, you know, in our tour, we looked at other potential smaller places that only 1 or 2 acres that don't have a use. I think that that's great to use those funds to launch, but to sell some of these assets, part of CPRD's success over the last 50 years, 40 years has been land banking, and not only just for today, but for, you know, 40 years ago for today, but today for 40 years from now. And so I think to have that mindset of let's sell some stuff, you know, yes, there are some things I believe that could get off the books, no problem, sell to neighbors or whatever that needed to be, but or you know, let the neighbors make an offer.
It's a deed restricted property, so. you
Not
can't
not
just
all
sell
of
it
them.
off.
Well, not all of them, but I do think that there are examples of what has been pointed out to me that could be sold. So yeah, so I think that using those in mind, long-term visioning and how are we funding these things long-term, I think is really the important part here.
Don't want to get into the land banking game. I think CPRD has proven that that's not sustainable at all, because now they're running into issues with the funds to take care of what they have.
I'm not talking about taking more property going, like, you know, I think what was Don Clemens would, you know, went and actively campaigned to get large amounts of acreage and so on. And that's not the example of something that I think we need to be doing on an active basis, but I'm talking about what we have now. You know, from Stuart Granville point of view, as the example is given by Commissioner Starrett or others. You know, Crabtree is not an example of something, you know, there's CPRD parks everywhere and it's underused. So that would be something that I would be interested in talking about getting rid of, and we have. But
Confusing when you mentioned land banking, and
no,
we're going the opposite way. We can't take care of what we have and And the ones that we do have that we've been sitting on since 1975, some of them are gorgeous. You just got to cut through all the berry briars.
Yeah.
So we just need to pick and choose what's going to be ideal for our park system. And I think the general rundown of this master plan is good. And I like the mission statement on it. So I think we're headed the right direction. Page 58, enhancing the ecosystem. I think this is going to be important for two very specific reasons. One's going to be the emerald ash borer. And I think we're already headed down this road with assessing all of our ash trees and doing all of our studies so that if there's any opportunity, ODA is going to have grant funding to start replacing these trees. We need to start doing that within the next, I'd say 5 years, because that, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but every study that I've heard about the emerald ash borer it's here, and it's not about saving the trees. It's a matter of you need to start planning on replacing them now so that in 50 years when they're gone, those trees that you replaced them with are grown up in their place.
Yeah, and on that point, I don't want to get down too far into the weeds on this, but one of our Parks Board members, Casey Heatsacker, has taken this on and doing a lot of the mapping and whatnot for us. And he's actually meeting with ODF here very soon to talk about the replanting process and getting them down to Deer Creek Park in particular. And just starting that process, not going in and wholesale planting because the trees are there, they're healthy right now.
Yep.
Everything's good. But we're really trying to get ahead of the game on some of that stuff. And I think at a 20,000 foot level with this plan, there's a lot of things that we're already kind of been working on, and it's aligning with how this plan is coming together. So I think we're getting a lot of validation, not only from the plan, but the work we're already doing, that we are headed the right direction.
Agreed. Yep.
So.
I have a question. I think I might have already asked you this. When we had work crews, it was really a game changer. We don't have them anymore. But I know juvenile detention has the community service kids, and they've been, cutting wood, stacking wood, delivering wood. Are we able to use some of those kids out in the parks? What a great.
It's historically, I mean, we've always had a partnership, because that we've had those crews. There are limitations, both, they have the same limitations on size and they spend most of their focus really at the wood barn, but they've helped with cleanup and projects.
Yeah, last year, for example, there was a small crew that came out and weed eated down Powerhouse Park. Right there on Baker Creek. It was something that we weren't going to be able to tackle, kind of knock down the weeds. But again, as Ken said, their numbers kind of do the same thing. They get some peaks and valleys and can only bring out so many kids at a time.
And there's some limitations on the equipment that they can
Correct.
run, much like what we used to do with adult work crews, where we had riding mowers.
Yeah.
They were doing full on maintenance of the systems, and we had daily numbers, and that was the old days.
Yeah,
Definitely changed the dynamic of what we can and can't do anymore. That's for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And general income when we had that CPRD contract,
Correct.
bringing in some money.
Correct.
While we were on the invasive species, the ivy would be another main focus that we're gonna have to start looking at. figuring
Yes.
out Something, because it will, you go around the upper side of like Rogers Landing, Dayton Landing.
Lafayette
I mean,
Locks.
well, yeah, don't even name it. It's pretty much everywhere.
Yeah.
And we just need to start
Yeah.
addressing that. So anyway, that's all the notes I had. You got anything else to add?
No, I just saw this one funding strategy proposal in here that just, I broke out in hives. And that was the one that said increase general fund. I'm sure you did too, because we just don't have it, just don't have extra money. I mean, it would be great, but this is well done. Thank you. And thank you for how engaged you all are. Especially our chair. I've never seen anything like it. Talk about hands-on.
Thank you.
Anna, do you have any closing statements? you'd
No,
like-
we just look forward to that adoption process and seeing this as a tool you can use going forward in decision making, guiding, and for staff to have those resources going forward. So appreciate your time and thank you for having us involved with this. It's been a real pleasure, and we've really delighted in the spaces and people in your county, and appreciate the opportunity.
Yep. Thanks, Anna.
Thank you, Anna.
Thanks, Travis.
you.
Mark.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, board.
What's your time frame?
We'll probably come sometime in August, but it could end up being September just
Okay.
because of vacation.
And just a quick update, where are we at total with this master plan, cost-wise?
We're getting close to the end, obviously. and
Okay,
this will be the
which was
first step.
100 and,
I gotta look.
155.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's been no additional beyond that. We're planning to finish this project on budget. And it will be dependent on if there's any other meetings or major revisions that are required or requested for the plan document. So that's what we're looking at for the overall
Well,
budget management from the
hopefully we-
project.
fit that map in there with no extra costs.
Yeah,
That
we'll
added-
have to talk about that one a little bit because we did have a hard time finding data about the community parks throughout. It seems that not much of it has been updated holistically for us to have that information. So we may need to talk about that and sort out how we get there.
Probably less of an issue with like a McMinnville and a Chehalem Parks as far as
Right.
data layers, but when you start getting into Willamina and some of the smaller communities and
Right.
Let's do what we can. So, or at
Make
least,
it work.
but I think our GIS should be able to help capture that or do some of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can figure
Cool.
that out.
Yeah, thank you.
thank you guys.
Thanks very
Thanks,
much.
Anna.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Bye-bye.
All right, I don't need this anymore, I don't think. All right, moving on to J2's consideration of approval of an intergovernmental agreement number 15373 between Yamhill County and the Oregon Youth Authority for support services in the not to exceed amount of $21,592 retroactive to July 1, 2025 through June 30, 2027.
And Chair, this is basically to keep kids out of the OYA facility and residential housing, so I would move approval.
Motion's been made. Any further discussion?
None.
None. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. J3 is consideration of approval of amendment number 1 to agreement number 026116 between Yamhill County and the Oregon Health Authority for Choice Model Services, Board Order 24-064, increasing funding by $102,464.99 and extending the term through December 31st, 2025.
And this is for folks with serious mental health issues, keeps them more independent, the most independent living possible and out of institutional care. So I'd move approval.
Motion's been made. Any further discussion?
Commissioner Starrett, is that what choice model is? I haven't heard that term before and I tried to
Ye-
look it up. but-
Yes, but basically, in other words, it's keeping them in situations that would support them being in any kind of care other than long-term institutional, because that's not only super expensive, but there's not really good
Ineffective.
outcome.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Great. Thank you.
All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. J4 is consideration of approval of an intergovernmental agreement between Yamhill County Transit and Washington County to receive $75,000 from Washington County STIF funds from the 23-25 and 25-27 bienniums to augment funding for YCT, Yamhill County Transit, Route 33, which is between McMinnville and Hillsborough, and rescinding the replacing board order 25-149.
I would move approval. I believe that this is Christian. We talked about this yesterday.
Yeah, it came to realize that there was a out-of-date document that had originally been attached to this when it was approved by the board, the underlying agreement between TriMet and Washington County that is the source of these funds. So we needed to update this and make sure that correct underlying agreement was attached to our agreement with Washington County, and that's what this would do.
Right. And this helps our transit because it actually was a route that we were paying for, and now it's one that that they wanted us to keep, and so they're going to fund it for us. So that's fantastic.
Yep.
Correct.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. And that brings us to K, which is public hearings. There is none. L is announcements. Commissioner King.
Mr. Chair, if I could.
Yes.
There was supposed to be another item on today's agenda, the adoption of the findings for the land use hearing that was held several weeks ago, docket S-0224. We're still working with the applicant to finalize those findings. So we expect that will be on next week's agenda.
We're still within our time frame.
Yes,
Okay.
Okay, great.
thanks.
Commissioner.
Yeah, this week I got a chance to have a little show and tell with Mark Lago and the Public Works Department. Went over a lot of the roads, just the quality and how the nuts and bolts all go together. It was really great just to see our largest investment. One of our largest investments that we have as a county is our roads and how well they're taken care of and a very high rate that they have. So that was great. Commissioner Johnson and I got a chance to tour Blanchett Farms, and it really highlights the need to me for the recovery resources. Sometimes traditional or conventional ways aren't always the right path for somebody, and giving a chance for a guy to connect with outside or the land or animals, or maybe even create a skill set with woodworking or soon to be hopefully some metalworking. It was very inspiring to get to see that program, and that they do it all without taking money from government, which I thought was very
That is
impressive.
fantastic.
Yeah, very, that there was no ask.
They are
for
very
these committees.
sustainable out
Yeah,
there,
very
yeah.
sustainable. And the other downtown Portland out here, they used to be in Beaverton, Aloha. The amount of, I forgot to ask the amount of men that feel like they've gone through their program, and I just thought that it was amazing. Local Investment Advisory Committee was short this week. We didn't have a quorum, so just a quick overview. Commissioner Johnson and I got to take a tour of Heater Allen. They were a recipient of a grant that you guys gave out last year. I really have enjoyed these tours. I think we have a couple more, but these guys have been making beer right here in McMinnville for over 20 years. Lisa's a second generation brewer taking over. I love it. And the money that they use, they're able to open a tap house and create at least 3 jobs now and probably 3 to 4 more in the future. So I think that was very wise on your guys' part. Money well spent. I would love to see us consider another round of these, or what we're going to do with this economic development funds. And again, there's examples of that being invested into parks or businesses, and what we're going to do with that in the future. I'd love to have that discussion. And then along those lines, I went to Chemeketa, the business center. They hosted a small business development program, kind of video that they put on. Zedcor is there, and just highlighting how they work with small businesses in Polk, Marion, and Yamhill counties. So it's great. Cool. That's all I got.
Commissioner?
Saturday, we had a wonderful turnout at Ed Grenfell Park, and appreciate the Parks Advisory Board and Mark Lago and Travis for showing up. Lots of folks came and raised some funding for electrifying the park, getting some lighting there. On Monday, we had 3 gentlemen who graduated from our recovery court, and it always is very inspiring to see a room full of people, of graduates and the new graduates, and appreciate really more than ever the importance of our TTRS programs that take folks who have been in residential, bring them locally, and support them in getting their kids back. So it was really impressive to watch these 3 men, what they went through, and see them now in our community helping other folks in recovery. The last 3 days was spent, the last 2 days was spent in Sheridan at Faulkner Chapman School. And I want to really thank our emergency manager, Brian Young, for putting this together. This is a grant he actually applied for it in 23, just got it. It's a $62,000 training. The price of it has gone up to $75,000. We're the only ones in Oregon who got it. And it was just the importance of integrating. We had dispatch there, we had YCOM, we had law enforcement, EMS, and fire there. Talking about the integration, we went through scenarios, active shooter, the importance of neutralizing the threat, securing the perimeter, and going ahead and triaging and getting folks. We even had a helicopter pilot who was able to work on getting the getting the wounded to specific facilities. There's so much that goes into this. Those integration trainings are really important. I know you can talk more about it.
Oh, all the way down to the PIO. I mean, they literally had the whole gambit. I mean, one of the instructors is standing over there, be like, "I'm with Channel 2 News, but nobody's here to give me an update." And finally, the PIOs come over from the area management station, and they come up, and it's emergency management lady that works out of Grand Ron, and then I can't remember the other guy, but they come up. They have no PIO experience, but they're running through it. They're
Yeah.
running through the scenarios. They know their notes, and based on what's been going on for the last 15 minutes with this, I think that one was an active shooter. Absolutely phenomenal.
It was impressive.
It was cool.
It was very cool. And I'm sorry that I have to miss the last day, but it was amazing. I'll let you talk more about that, but I do want to talk about Local Government Advisory Committee was on Friday, and they really talked a little bit about some of the funding funding changes. A couple of things that are important to note is that HHS has formally made some changes in terms of changes to taxpayer-funded benefits for eligible individuals. And it's impacted everything where folks would need to be citizens to, and that's from everything from Head Start all the way to the family planning programs, mental health, substance use disorder. So they talked about that. But what was a little bit concerning to me was that even though HHS had defunded Planned Parenthood, the state of Oregon has allocated $25 million to Planned Parenthood out of the state's budget, and also $25 million to an organization called Seeding Justice, which one of our local legislators has tried unsuccessfully to have that funding rescinded. I've watched this for years. And this was a group that wound up getting a grant to use some of the money we could have used locally for childcare. And it is, by all intents and purposes, by anybody's definition, a pretty radical, politically, ideologically driven group. So unfortunately, this is where the money's going to go. And also there's going to be, so $10 million to, you've got Planned Parenthood. You're going to have money that is going to be allocated to the Healthier Oregon program, which again is full funding for that program, regardless of immigration status. That's House Bill 2010, which is really going to put us further in the crosshairs of the federal government. And that's going to be something we're going to have to watch very closely.
Thank you. Last Thursday, we had a planning commission meeting. We had, besides land use application come through, which we'll see probably within the next couple weeks come to us. There was 2 resignations, one by Matt Dunkel. He'll be serving until we find a replacement for him. Alan Halstead resigned and he will no longer be there. So there is officially 1 empty seat. There will be 2. But if you're out there and you're interested, start filling out some applications so we can get that board filled back up. Youth Town Hall. Yeah.
If I may, we may want to talk about that process because I know we get a lot of interest for the planning commission, and maybe I'll connect with Ken Friday and see where we're at with the resignations and getting this, because we may want to do a close date and a review. I just know the planning commission is one of those committees that we don't have a lengthy period of time, and we've had challenges in the past to just kind of open up the floodgates, and then when do we want to cut off, when to end the process we go through.
Yep.
So if
Sound
you're
fine.
okay
My
with
understanding is there, Alan he's resigned, so he's gone. But in the bylaws, it's you are there until your replacement is put
that. And
into
so
the
what we'll
bylaw.
do is we'll post it like a recruit. I think that's what we did the last couple times because we did have a lot of interest, and just want to avoid any controversy or anything like that, or at least minimize or mitigate that as much as I
Absolutely.
can.
And I think we have some applications in the queue, but ask Ken, see what we got going on there for sure.
Should we say 30 days? Or is that?
I can connect to Ken and I could come back possibly next week and I can just run it by the board
Sure.
and get a thumbs up of what the process is going to look like.
Sure, that'd be great. Cool. Lafayette Youth Town Hall, I thought it went pretty good. A light turnout, but a lot of great questions. And the mayor was very receiving of all the comments, and she even had some great suggestions and wanted to make sure that, the government's not overreaching into how they how parents should be caring for their children, but I thought it went very well. Great conversation. Our sheriff's deputies that are out there had great feedback for what's going on in the community, but I thought it went well. Friday morning, I got the opportunity to introduce our fair ambassadors at the Mac Friday Greeters that was at the Preserve Event Center, which used to be the Bayou Golf Course, but is now called the Nines. Dog Fest was Saturday. We covered that. Tuesday, Ken, do you want to give just a slight update on the benefits and wellness fair that went on? I thought it was pretty cool.
I thought it went well. Really great attendance. Our HR team, and they also did some recruiting. We had some people from other departments that were also supplementing and assisting, and then kudos to our facilities department for pulling that off. It went really well. We did it in the new building, and it really seemed it was well attended, and it, Patricia and her team are doing an outstanding job every year. Just seeing what the benefit and wellness fair is looking like, and it really seemed well received, and so it was a great event.
Cool. Thank you. Tuesday night was also the Dundee City Council meeting. They reviewed their TSB funding. We are being requested to sign on to a letter of support for their funding that they're requesting through ODOT to fund the TSP.
Do you have that letter?
I don't yet. I will get it from
Do you?
them. For Dundee, TSP, transportation.
Can you, yeah, because I think that's pretty time sensitive.
Yes, tomorrow.
Tomorrow it's due? We.
Well, we need to
no,
review
we
it first.
As a board, and we needed to have that today.
Yeah.
It's grant funding that is important for folks to have, and if we don't get that information.
Gonna sign it.
No, it was they asked the board to sign it. That's not okay. I mean, and you were going to, and now the time is up and we can't.
I didn't get it. That's that
They sent it
that
to
was
you.
Tuesday.
No, you're talking about funding that is really important, that they're asking the board for a letter of support, and we didn't get the opportunity to approve that letter today.
They didn't ask me to bring it.
Can you email that, please?
Can you get that
Yep.
to us, please?
All right, thanks. Yesterday, Heater Allen Tour, 10K that we approved to them for air conditioning, and the air conditioning is working fantastic right now. Good tour, great people, like what they're doing there. I've never actually been out there before, but they have a little pizza joint out of a trailer that's in the backyard there. Yeah, so I will be visiting them. Also yesterday, we're getting prepped for the fair, so I went to the Youth Livestock Auction Committee meeting, just kind of going over some details and making sure there's good communication between the fair and the livestock committee. This morning was Parkway Committee, pretty much the same stuff, and nothing we haven't heard already as far as where the legislature's at. There does seem to be, which if you guys got in an email, AOC
Yeah.
sent out an update where I'm not sure where the information's coming from, but it sounds like they're going to have a special session to address the ODOT funding. They are still at the Parkway Committee. ODOT employees did verify that they do have pink slips in hand. They're going through the bumping process right now through, I think, two different unions are affected with it. So some of them are dated, I think she said, for July 31st. So they're coming up quick. We'll see what the legislature ends up doing there.
A couple of weeks, they're saying a couple of weeks
Couple of
perhaps for that special session, but they're hoping for that 50-30-20 split.
Yeah. Oh, that was the AOC email. Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
Yep. Tomorrow is Newburgh Greeters. The ambassadors will be there. And that pretty much wraps up what I got. Happy birthday to Quinn. Happy 17th.
Quinn.
If she's listening.
He's all grown up.
And with that, anybody got anything? All right. We're going to close her out at 11:19. Thank you very much.